They almost had my front door open when the court papers landed in her hands. The deadbolt was halfway out. A screwdriver still turning. Two people in matching community safety polos filming from the curb like I was a criminal. And the HOA president smiling behind them with a clipboard, already acting like the house belonged to her. 3 days earlier, I wasn't at war with anyone. I was just doing what you're supposed to do when someone in your family dies. Handle it cleanly. Handle it by the book. Handle it the boring way. My Aunt June had passed quietly. The way she lived. No drama, no mess. She left me her farmhouse and the small parcel of land it sat on, and she left everything organized. A will. A trust. Updates made after my uncle died. Probate wasn't some mystery novel. It was a checklist. I had letters of appointment from the court. I had copies ready for banks. Utilities. Anyone who needed proof that I wasn't freelancing my authority. The only thing I did that might have looked unusual was setting up a separate email address for the estate, just so the paperwork wouldn't get buried under my personal inbox. It took 10 minutes. Within an hour, I was transferring utilities into the estate's name, checking boxes, doing exactly what adults are told to do. That's when my phone buzzed. The sender was something generic and cold. Community compliance at Maple Resto. The subject line wasn't a question. It wasn't even a request to contact them. It was a declaration, written in bold like it wanted to scare me into obedience. Final notice? Unauthorized occupancy. Property reverted to association. No greeting. No verification. No, please contact us. Just artificial confidence and a countdown tone, like a collection agency pretending to be a court. I read it twice. Then I felt that strange mix of anger and disbelief crawl up my spine. Not panic yet. Just that feeling of, wait, what? I did what my aunt would have done. I printed it. Paper has weight. Paper has timestamps. Paper doesn't disappear when someone edits a post or deletes a thread. I started a timeline on the kitchen counter. Date, time, sender, subject line, attachments, screenshots of everything before I replied. Then I wrote one sentence back, measured and sterile. I am the court, appointed personal representative of June Keller's estate. This property is in probate. Direct all communication to my attorney. That should have been the end of it. If Maple Rest HOA had a real claim, that email would have turned into formal service. Lawyers talking to lawyers. If they didn't, a sane organization would have backed off the moment the word attorney entered the room. Sanity wasn't the mechanism here. The next morning, Melissa Hart showed up like she'd been waiting for daylight. She didn't step onto my porch. She stayed right at the edge of the driveway, close enough to feel intrusive, far enough to say she was respecting property lines. She had Gavin Reed with her, the management company guy in a pressed shirt who talked like a training video. Behind them were two residents I'd never met, lingering the way people linger when they want to watch, without being responsible for what happens. "Good morning," Melissa called out, bright and friendly, the tone people use when they're trying to make you look unreasonable by contrast. "We're here to ensure community safety and continuity." Community safety. That phrase landed like a warning shot. Not a courtroom first, a neighborhood first. Reputation before law. "This property isn't part of your association," I said, keeping my voice level. "And it's in probate." Her smile didn't twitch. "It falls within the planned community boundary. Your aunt was a member." "She wasn't," I said. "And even if she had been, you don't inherit land because you run an HOA." Gavin lifted a folder like he was offering me options at a car dealership. "We can make this easy," he said. "A temporary surrender of possession while we review ownership." Temporary surrender. That was the trap. The second I signed anything that looked like a handover, their story would become my confession. I let the words hang there, heavy and obvious. In writing only, I said. Email my attorney. Melissa tilted her head, still smiling. You should understand that unauthorized occupancy creates liability. If something happens on that property, you expose yourself and the community. Liability, safety, exposure, fear words, stacked carefully, designed to make people step back without ever demanding proof. It wasn't about winning title. It was about making the world treat me like a hazard. Noted, I said. Now leave. They did, but they didn't go quiet. By that afternoon, Maple Rest's neighborhood platform had a pinned post from an account called Safety Liaison. It didn't use my name. It didn't have to. Notice, property under transition. Do not engage with occupants. Do not provide services. Direct questions to management. Melissa commented underneath it like it was a public service announcement. That's when the mechanism snapped into focus. Reputation? Social isolation. If they could convince enough third parties that I was unauthorized, I wouldn't be able to hire contractors, receive deliveries, get help from neighbors, or exist without friction. They didn't need a judge if they could make daily life fail. So I treated the narrative like evidence. Screenshots with timestamps, exported threads, saved the page as a PDF. I didn't argue online. Arguing feeds a lie. Documentation starves it. Then I called Nora Klein, a title examiner my aunt had used. Neutral, methodical, not emotionally invested in anyone's drama. Nora didn't tell me to stay strong. She gave me procedure. Don't chase their claims, she said. Make them put specifics in writing. Keep everything, every third-party contact, every cancellation, every post. The harm is the story. The harm arrived fast. A roofing contractor I'd scheduled called 10 minutes before he was supposed to pull in. I'm sorry, he said. I'm not taking the job. I got a vendor advisory about unauthorized occupancy and pending enforcement. I don't want my company dragged into a dispute. Forward me what you got, I said. He hesitated, then sent it. The email had the HOA logo and Gavin Reed's digital signature. Polished phrases. Service provider exposure. Potential trespass risk. Language meant to sound neutral while doing one thing very effectively. Isolating me. I logged it, date, time, recipient, the contractor's cancellation message. Then I forwarded it to my probate attorney, Tessa Monroe. Tessa didn't dramatize it. Good, she said. That's clean. That's interference. Keep collecting. The HOA escalated from risk to danger. 2 nights later, a deputy knocked after dark, polite, professional, alert. Welfare check, he said. Caller reported possible unauthorized occupancy and unsafe conditions. I didn't rant about HOAs. I handed him my letters of appointment and my ID. He read them, nodded, and his posture eased. Can I get the incident number? I asked. He gave it to me. I added it to the timeline. Not because I wanted anyone arrested on the spot, but because patterns matter. A pattern becomes a record. A record becomes leverage. The next escalation was quieter, nastier. My mail. I went to the post office and was told there'd been a change of address request filed in my aunt's name, redirecting mail off site. Not an HOA letterhead dispute. Something more realistic. A fraudulent submission that looked official enough to cause confusion. The clerk didn't accuse anyone. She didn't care about HOA politics. She cared about forms and identity verification. I showed her my probate documents and my ID. I flagged the change as fraud, locked down the mail, and moved everything to a P.O. box under the estate's name. She stapled my paperwork to the file and said, "This happens more than you think. That one sentence told me everything about how comfortable some people are weaponizing bureaucracy. By then, the doubt had started creeping in, late at night, standing in a quiet house that still smelled like my aunt's coffee. I caught myself thinking, what if I'm wrong? What if there's some technicality I missed? What if they really do have some authority I don't understand? I was tired. Grief does that to you. It lowers your defenses. There was a moment, a real one, where I thought about packing a bag, stepping back, letting lawyers sort it out while I stayed somewhere else, just to breathe. That's the danger point. That's where people like Melissa expect you to fold. Then my phone rang again, and everything changed. "Are you at the Keller property?" the woman asked. "Yes," I said. "My name is Marcy Bell. I'm a regional manager for a locksmith and property services company. We work with Maple Rest HOA. I have a work order scheduled for Monday morning. Exterior rekey. Reason listed, safety compliance." I didn't react. I didn't let my voice jump. "Who approved it?" I asked. There was a pause. "Melissa Hart." There it was. Not a courtroom. Not a real eviction. A staged display. Show up with a locksmith. Call it safety. Lock me out in broad daylight and let the neighborhood absorb the image. Me on the wrong side of my own door. While Melissa performed authority for an audience. "Marcy," I said, "hold your crew. My attorney will send you a letter today." "I need to keep my people out of a lawsuit," she said. "You will," I said. "And you may have just helped me stop something bigger." When I hung up, the helplessness snapped into focus. They weren't just pressuring me. They were manufacturing reality. And that meant the only way out was to interrupt the performance with something stronger than confidence. Paper. I called Tessa. This part wasn't cinematic. It was procedural combat. She drafted an emergency request for a temporary restraining order. Narrow, specific, practical. The HOA, its officers, agents, employees, and contractors, anyone acting in concert, were to refrain from entering the property or interfering with my possession while probate and title issues were pending. We attached what mattered: my letters of appointment, the compliance email, the vendor advisory, screenshots of the neighborhood posts, the incident number from the welfare check, the fraudulent change of address complaint, the locksmith work order with Melissa's approval. No speeches, just a paper trail with dates and receipts. Tessa also did one thing that kept the whole thing grounded in reality. She didn't leave timing to luck. She scheduled service of the court order for the same window listed on the locksmith work order. If the HOA wanted a stage, we'd meet them there with the court. Monday morning arrived the way these things always do. On time. Confident. Wrong. The locksmith van pulled up first. The tech got out with a tool bag, and that cautious look people have when they've been told something is authorized but still don't want surprises. Two adults in community safety polos followed, phones already up, recording from the curb. Gavin Reed stood behind them, hands visible, posture carefully non-committal. Then Melissa Hart walked up the path with her clipboard held like a badge. The tech approached the door and hesitated. "Do you have proof of authorization?" he asked. Not to me, but to the group. Melissa didn't miss a beat. She produced a management authorization letter on letterhead, designed to look official enough to quiet doubt. She spoke smoothly, loud enough for the cameras. "This property is under association control pending transition," she said. "We're securing it for safety." I stood in the doorway. "I am the court-appointed representative of the estate," I said. "This house is not vacant. This house is not yours." Melissa smiled at the phones, not at me. "Proceed," she told the locksmith. That one word was her whole strategy. Confidence as a substitute for authority. The locksmith started working, slow, reluctant, but working. The deadbolt began to come apart. And then the process server walked up the path. "Melissa Hart?" he asked. "Yes," she said, still smiling. "You've been served." He placed the court, stamped papers directly into her hands. I watched the exact second her eyes hit the first page. The smile didn't fade. It shut off, like a breaker flipping. Her throat tightened. Gavin leaned in to read over her shoulder. The safety phones dipped a few inches. The locksmith froze, hands still on the hardware, suddenly aware he might be standing in the wrong chapter of the story. Marcy Bell stepped into view from near the curb, calm and businesslike. She didn't look at me for reassurance. She looked at the papers, then at her tech. "That order restrains contractors and agents acting in concert," she said. "Pack up, we're out." The locksmith backed away like he'd been waiting for someone else to make the decision for him. Melissa tried to recover the narrative in real time. "This is temporary," she said, raising her voice for the cameras. "This doesn't change ownership. The community still has rights here. I didn't argue doctrine. I didn't lecture law. I kept it operational. This changes what you can do today," I said. "And today is the only thing you were banking on." Then I did the one thing people like Melissa can't stand. I let documents speak louder than her tone. I sent a short email to a handful of neighbors who had quietly reached out over the last few days. People who'd seen her weaponize compliance before and wanted proof before they picked a side. I attached the locksmith work order with her approval, the vendor advisory with Gavin's signature, the screenshot of the "Do Not Engage" post with timestamps, and the first page of the court order with the stamp. No insults, no victory speech, just evidence. Melissa's eyes flicked from the papers to the phones to the locksmith retreating toward the van. She looked like she was deciding whether to escalate or retreat. That's the psychological reversal in its purest form. The person who believes the world moves when she speaks. Discovering the world moves when the court speaks. "You think you won?" she said, low now, real anger pressing through the polish. I held her gaze. "I think you just lost your stage." The locksmith van door slid shut. Marcy got into her car without giving Melissa another glance. Gavin stepped back as if distance could erase his signature from an email. The two community safety phones stopped recording. Because filming a losing side isn't fun anymore. Melissa stood on the walkway, gripping the court order so hard the corners bent. She didn't scream. She didn't break down. She tried one last time to reframe it as virtue. "This community deserves protection," she said. "You don't protect a community by inventing ownership," I said. "You protect yourself for a moment." The air went still. Somewhere down the road, a dog barked once and went quiet. The neighborhood didn't cheer. It didn't clap. It just watched. Because what they were really seeing wasn't my triumph. It was Melissa's authority collapsing into paper. After they left, I didn't chase them into the street. I didn't stand in the driveway to savor it. I closed the door. And the house settled back into its own silence. Later that afternoon, sunlight slid across my aunt's kitchen floor the same way it always had, indifferent to HOA theater. The wall clock kept ticking, steady and unimpressed. I straightened the timeline on the counter. Screenshots, emails, incident number, fraud report, work order, court order. Then I added one final line in clean handwriting. Attempted recce blocked. Order served. The tire marks in the gravel would fade in a day or two, just like every trace left by people who show up uninvited and leave empty-handed. I stood at the window for a second longer, not celebrating, not relieved, just precise, watching the road where Melissa's confidence had arrived and her certainty had departed. Then I turned away and let the quiet do its job. Power only works until someone asks for proof.